Welcome to 10th or Tuesday. This is episode number 18, and we are on day 124. I believe that the GOP has failed to get rid of Obamacare. Is that right, Mike Maharrey?
That sounds about right. If it's not, we'll correct it later.
The number's getting pretty high, so
it is. It gets kind of hard to keep up with, but
when we're in the 1,000 or so, I'm sure the people will start noticing a little bit more.
Right.
But some good things that we've been reporting on the 10th Amendment Center blog in the last week or so since our last episode. Make sure if you don't follow us on the regular basis and you want to keep up to date, go to 10thamendmentcenter.com/register, and you can actually get a daily update. We really don't send out every single day. It depends on how busy things are on the site, sometimes twice a week, sometimes 4 or 5. But go to 10thamendmentcenter.com/register to sign up for that. Now, Mike, you reported on a couple of important privacy bills that moved forward, one in New Hampshire and another in Michigan. First, let's talk about the Stingray bill, the bill to require a warrant before using a cell site simulator in New Hampshire.
Yeah, solid Stingray bill that's moving forward in New Hampshire would require a warrant most situations. Does have some exceptions to the warrant requirement, but even those are pretty tightly circumscribed. So this is a very, very solid bill to stop police from using these devices that can sweep up call data, location information. They operate these things often without a warrant, without anybody even knowing. And so this is a great bill, a very solid step forward for privacy in New Hampshire.
It's House Bill 474. It passed the House already. This was just last week. It passed the Senate with some technical amendments.
Yeah.
So, Mike, it's got to go back to the House, right, before it can go off to the governor's desk.
But the amendments were pretty minor, so I don't see any problem with this going to the governor's desk.
Okay, so we'll be keeping an eye on that over in New Hampshire, House Bill 474. And then in Michigan, we call him a friend of the 10th Amendment Center, Jim Runestad, who's been championing privacy measures since he was a county commissioner a number of years ago, has again introduced and got to move forward a resolution to amend the state constitution to put electronic data and communications on the same state constitutional level as persons, houses, papers, and effects, or however they put it in the Michigan Constitution.
Yeah, this is really what I would call a foundational kind of piece of legislation, or constitutional amendment more accurately, in that it really just creates a bedrock that other state laws can be built upon, and would treat your private data just like your mail and your personal effects in your home, and would very much strengthen the requirements for warrants, and would limit law enforcement's ability to nose around in your computer and your email and in your phone calls. So very much like the amendment that was passed in Missouri a couple of years ago.
Right.
And I think this is just a very, very important first step. Again, it creates that bedrock. And if that's in place, then it really becomes incumbent upon the state courts to require warrants for any type of electronic data.
In Michigan, it's actually persons, houses, papers, and possessions. That's the version that they have in the Michigan State Constitution, and it passed 107 to 0 out of the State House just last week. I think it was maybe Wednesday. House Joint Resolution C, HJRC. If it passes in the Senate, where we've seen trouble on positive things in Michigan in the past, if it does pass the Senate, it bypasses the governor and then goes directly to the people for a vote.
Right.
So then if the people approve it, it becomes part of the state constitution. And like you said, Mike, this is an excellent foundational step forward. Another bill that we should talk about is in Louisiana, actually Louisiana and Texas. You and I have been reporting on and talking about and making videos and writing about these right to try bills, basically that are doing an end run, bypassing some what we would call unconstitutional restrictions by the FDA. I don't think the FDA should even exist.
No.
So the fact that, I mean, what they end up doing on top of it is they, in general, they're protecting drug companies' profits by restricting access to treatments that aren't necessarily made by the major drug manufacturers. So experimental treatments that people on their deathbed or with terminal illnesses have no access to. So a number of states, I think it's over 30 now.
Yeah, 34, I believe.
okay, have passed these right to try acts. We've also reported on Dr. Ibrahim Deplasand in Texas, who may have saved the lives of dozens of people by following the state law and nullifying the FDA restrictions. Now, really interesting bills. It's fascinating because when we first started reporting on this, a lot of industry lobbyists were publishing articles and papers saying, oh, this is just a feel-good measure, don't fall for the trap. And now we see it actually being put into practice. And then even further, within just a matter of a couple of years, Louisiana and Texas are even working to expand it. First, walk us through what's going on in Louisiana.
Well, this is a really interesting bill because it's very, very specifically targeted. There was a New Orleans Saints football player named Steve Gleason who was diagnosed, I believe, back in 2011 with ALS, Lou Gehrig's disease, which is a degenerative muscle disease. So he's essentially wheelchair bound at this point. Okay. And there's a technology that allows somebody in a wheelchair to actually drive and maneuver the wheelchair using the movement of their eyes, which is just an amazing technology. But this has not gone through the complete phase 1 trial for the FDA, so this is not widely available for people. And essentially, the FDA blocks it because it's not been approved for this use.
This isn't even a food or a drug, right?
But the
FDA
it's a computer program.
Okay, and the FDA is still involved. Okay, they should nullify that into oblivion, actually.
Yeah, absolutely.
So the Louisiana Right to Try Act was one of the first ones passed, and it basically did an end run around a limited set of circumstances that the FDA was blocking. Just if you were on your deathbed and you wanted to try certain medications within a limited scope. And now that has passed, we're seeing that being expanded. That legislation that you're talking about, Mike, passed. Did it pass unanimously in the state house?
It did pass unanimously in the state house, 88-0.
Okay, and that's House Bill 179. It's off to the Senate. From your indication, at least, you've talked with the sponsor or maybe their aide. Is there some good hope for it to move forward in the Senate as well?
I think it will. This bill's been fast tracked. It has the the kind of feel good story behind it. There's a real person that can benefit, and real people. I mean, it's not just this
the
football
famous
player.
guy, right? Of course.
Right. And this is really fascinating to me too because it is so narrowly tailored, and it makes you realize that when you take a broad thing like right to try and you see it work as we did in Texas, all of a sudden people start thinking, we could use it for this and we could use it for this. And I really think that this is going to expand massively. You mentioned the Texas bill. The Texas Right to Try Act right now applies to people that have
just one quick note first.
Illness.
The Louisiana bill, it's actually up for a hearing tomorrow, Wednesday, in the Senate committee. It's the Committee on Health and Welfare in the state Senate. So hopefully we'll have a report on that moving forward out of committee and then to the Senate floor. So we could see in the next week or so that going to the governor's desk in Louisiana. Now, Texas, this is House Bill 661, also passed, I think, unanimously or close in the state house in Texas.
Right. And what I was getting ready to say is this is another example of expanding right to try. So the original right to try bill law that is already in place in Texas applies to people with a terminal illness. Right. And this bill would actually expand that to allow people that have chronic illnesses to access certain drugs and treatments. So, somebody that has a problem where they can't walk properly or a pain issue or a debilitative illness, not necessarily going to be fatal, but it's creating major stresses on their lives, they'll be able to possibly access different types of treatments that are not approved. Yeah,
so that's a broad expansion that they're going for, saying it's not just if you're dying, but if you've got a long-standing illness, chronic, which generally means it's not going away. So
right, I think there's a definite. I think they actually define it like it's something that would be ongoing for longer than a year. And I think is actually how they define it in the bill. So
however they end up defining it, whether it's a year or lifetime, basically it should be up to the person to say, I'm going to make an informed decision. They're not requiring any companies or insurance agents to pay for it. They're just saying it's your choice. Now, the FDA says it's not your choice. It's the FDA's choice. It doesn't matter what you're ill with, what other people have used. And in fact, Dr. Deplasand there in Texas that we talked about just a few minutes ago, the treatment he was using was already being used, and this is for cancer, was already being used in Europe. So it's not like this is just coming from the jungle somewhere, and it's like some kind of voodoo magic or something. It's being used used in developed countries with success. It's just that the FDA probably doesn't see a profit motive for whatever company wants to bring it to market here in the U.S. yet, so, or vice versa.
Right.
So this is really broad. House Bill 661. It was just considered in committee again last week. On the Senate side, the session is getting close to ending, so you might want to call your state senator if you're in Texas and ask them to support House Bill 661. Mike, any other thoughts on the right to try?
No, it's just, again, I want to emphasize this, and it's like we've seen with marijuana, we've seen it with hemp, we've seen it even possibly beginning with the with various gun laws. When you encourage a market, when you let people do things, it tends to expand. So even small steps forward can become huge steps forward when people realize, hey, we can really do this.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
I just find it really encouraging.
Well, and I think that's the argument against any type of decriminalization, whether it be a decriminalization of a short-barreled shotgun or decriminalization of experimental treatments or marijuana or whatever it is. The statists, the people that stand against us at every turn, they say, well, as soon as you allow them to do this, they're going to do blank. And they come up with the scariest scenarios of all the bad things. Yeah, well, we're not going to be scared out of liberty, are we?
No,
I mean, a lot of people are.
And most of it's BS. Let's be honest. The scare tactics are BS. But then you look at the real life applications. You look at Texas. You had more than 70 people who were able to continue a cancer treatment that the FDA was literally going to take away.
They said they were going to die. They told him to stop treating these patients because they are no longer allowing that. And once the Texas Act passed, he decided to do it. Anyways, those people went forward with it. And at the time, the last report, we did a video on this as well, and so did Goldwater Institute, which created the bill. And I think most of them were still living when I think all of them were on their deathbed. So that is extremely positive. Now, we talk about a lot of really good things. One other one that I wanted to talk about was Senate Bill 95, just briefly, a bill to legalize some limited raw milk sales at, I believe, retail stores passed out of the state Senate in Texas. It's got just a short amount of time there to go through the state House. So again, call your state representative if you're supporting raw milk in Texas to get behind Senate Bill 95. Now, instead of just all the positive stuff, there are a few negative ones. I think we should start covering this more and more so we can see how, whether it's a state, local, or federal level, you really can't trust the political parties when they start working together on a lot of stuff. One was in Maine, where they had a great chance to restrict asset forfeiture, and they killed a bill over there, right?
Yeah, I've often joked that when you start hearing about bipartisan cooperation, it's usually going to be something awful. Like at the federal level, it's usually a war or they're going to spy on you. Yeah. And what they did here in Maine is we had a bipartisan effort to kill very strong asset forfeiture reform. It would have required a conviction in most cases, and it would have also closed a loophole that allows the state and local law enforcement to pass off cases to the feds in order to avoid more stringent state laws. And
that was LD 888 from State Senator Eric Brakey, who's a good friend of the Liberty Movement, was a grassroots activist for a long time. I know he was on the Tom Woods show recently.
He was,
so that was a really good bill that left and right worked together to make sure that didn't go anywhere in Maine. And one other that I wanted to cover, Mike, before we actually have to get going here, is in New Hampshire. We've been following efforts in support of jury nullification in New Hampshire for a few years, and this is the second legislative session in a row where a bill got passed out of the state House or the general court and then moved over to the Senate. And what happened?
It got dead. Yeah. It was pretty close in the House. I think it was a 10-vote margin, I believe, in the House.
170 to 160, yes.
What essentially killed it over on the Senate side was the committee report. The process there in New Hampshire is even if a committee votes that a bill is not expedient to legislate, it will still go to the floor. Yeah,
every bill gets a vote. Every bill gets a vote by the full chamber in New Hampshire, which is a pretty cool process. Yeah. But the committees have a lot of power there. So if the committee report says one thing, and this was, I think, 5-1 or something, basically only one person supported it, House Bill 133, that means the state Senate is going to vote against it almost every single time. So that's very unfortunate. And I know the people that are behind that, Dan Itza and many other people in New Hampshire, are probably going to wind up for another round in the next legislative session. So we'll be keeping an eye on it. And of course, Again, go to 10thamendmentcenter.com/register to get updates on these and other pieces of legislation that we've been following. And then also, if you support our work, it's extremely important that you get behind us financially as well. 10thamendmentcenter.com/members is the place where you can sign up for a membership and support our work for as little as $2 a month. And of course, thank you so much for watching. We'll see you next time here at 10th or Tuesday.